came across a bastion of flesh that cowered above, smothering the stars. Those who followed in my footsteps did not hold, pushing me against the warm walls. I was crushed and swallowed whole, urged unerringly by those I led. I was welcomed into his embrace.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the follow-up build for the Freezing Pulse Totem Hierophant version. In this video I'll go over all the mechanics of the build as well as the gear used, skill setup, flasks, cluster jewels, as well as the unique jewels used, as well as how to switch from Freezing Pulse to Ice Spear as well, and also some tips on how to improve the gear and take it to the next level basically. So let us begin with the gear setup. So in this gear showcase there will be 3 uniques that interact with each other to make this build happen. Starting off from the Soul Mantle body armor, where our main 6-link setup is located. This has socketed gems are supported by level 20 spell totem. This allows us to cast totems without with one less support involved for totems. So we can add another extra support gem for boosting our DPS, as well as the armor allows us to have one extra maximum totem. The downside, however, is when we summon a totem and it dies, we get cursed with a random curse. And so while we are using this, we need a way to mitigate that curse do not apply to us. The way we do it is by using Atziri's reflection. This allows us to have unaffected by curses. So we are gonna get cursed, but it will not affect us. This may sound ridiculous, but it's actually really good. Other than that, this gives us a lot of energy shield as well as elemental resistance as well. So what happens is we are cursed, but we do not get affected by it. It's really good. Usually this is very expensive, but in this league it's like 2x because of the Val reliquary piece, so this is a proper time to use it, but during league start it will still be really expensive as well. The other unique is Coward's Legacy. This is also very cheap for what it does. What it does is we are always low life. Even if we have full life, we are considered to be a low life. So we can have Pain Attunement on the tree for extra 30% spell damage. Other than that, this curses us with vulnerability, which gets negated through Aziri's reflection. Now, how this works is we have 6 totems like this. Whenever 2 our totems just died, we got 2 curses on us. We can have a total of like 8 curses on us, 8 random curses. So this gets activated when we have curses, and this is actually negated through this. So we have these curse debuffs on us, but we don't get affected by it. Same goes for the map modifiers. So the map modifiers that have like curse with temporal chains, curse with vulnerability, LA weakness, they are all negated through this Aziri's reflection. And we actually want to have these curses all the time on us because they actually give us damage boost. I will get into that later when I am explaining the skill tree section and unique gems and unique jewels. The other 2 uniques used in this build is the Essence Worm Rings and Pandemonius. Pandemonius is a general good damage boosting amulet, as well as giving us the blinds, so it gives us some survivability as well, some dex, which helps us cap our dex requirements. So because you are gonna be dex starved at some extent, because we have a lot of dex gems being used, that is. The other gears, the helmet, the boot is all for capping resistances, life and movement speed. These rare gloves are for capping your dex. You get enough dex, like you need like 45 dex minimum to get capped, and the source is gonna be the gloves. As well as the damage mod that you can get here is increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. This is not needed. You can just grab any glove with dex, life, resistances if you want to. This is just a purely extra. The helmet has an upgrade. You can grab nearby enemies have -9% to cold resistance helmet with a redeemer base. That will be a lot of damage boost. For the weapon, you want either a wand or a scepter. The mandatory mods on the weapon will be +1 level of cold spell skill gems and a lot of critical strike chance for spells, preferably above 90%. This is the only source where you get a lot of crit chance. We get a lot of crit multi, but crit chance is scarce on the build, so we get it through here. The other mandatory, or not mandatory, but other mods that you are looking for is increased spell damage, cold damage to spells, and cast speed. And that's about it for all the gear. Now for the skill setup or gem setup, we have freezing pulse, and from the body armor we are getting spell totem. So spell totem, freezing pulse, multiple totems, added cold damage, hypothermia, controlled destruction, and I have actually put increased crit damage support because I couldn't get it to like a green link. You preferably want 3 greens, so you can put in a cold penetration, but this was the closest I can get. That's for the body armor. On the rings, zealotry and hatred. On the helmet, we have sigil of power plus frost shield linked to increased AoE effect and increased duration. These are merely supports to boost our defenses, as well as very little amount of damage that actually is not considered. It's just for defenses. For the weapon, we have lightning golem with culling strike and minion life for the survivability of minions. This is for culling strike, and also minion grants us some cast speed. You actually maybe put meat shield in there so the minion stays with you instead of running off and dying in the distance, and you have to summon it constantly. For the gloves, we have an Arcanist brand setup with Blade Blast, Sniper's Mark, and Frost Bomb. Frost Bomb for the exposure, Sniper's Mark for the curse and extra damage, Blade Blast for unnerving the enemy. On our boots, we have a cast on damage second setup with Immortal Call linked to increased duration, and then we have a separate Tempest Shield with increased duration. This is manually casted here. That is for the skill setup. Now let's go up to the tree. Firstly, the ascendancy. We're gonna be a Hierophant. For our first ascendancy, we want Pursuit of Faith for totem duration and +1 extra totem, and then Ritual of Awakening for more damage as well as more mana regeneration and life regeneration. With these two nodes, the build becomes very not easy but actually good to play. Otherwise this build kinda sucks while leveling. And then for our third lab, we want Arcane Blessing for extra Arcane Surge effect, and fourth lab will be the Endurance and Power charges on here. If you want to sacrifice some damage, you take off these two nodes and then get Divine Guidance for an extra 10% Mind over Matter. This will be a big survivability boost if you want to. For the tree, it's generally from starting from Hierophant, we go up to here, take these life nodes, damage nodes and cast speed node here, go over to this totem node, cast speed nodes, this area for spell crit multi, frost, cold damage and cold resistance, and as well as some block chance, life. Then you go over to the shadow side of the tree, cast speed, life, crit multi, as well as pain attunement and some more cast speed. On the left side we have a cluster setup here, some life, very big boost to Arcane Surge, and then down here we have increased elemental damage plus this slot with Transcended Flesh. This allows us to gain like 49% crit multi from this jewel socket alone, but we are actually having, since we allocated this node for spell crit, so we are losing 7% from this. We are getting actually 42% crit multi from this. If you can put a triple crit multi jewel on this slot instead of this, that will be better because it will give you life or mana instead of just giving you crit multi. We also have Ancestral Bond so that we have an extra totem. The cluster setup will be Sap Psych, Practice Caster. This one is a filler. Practice Caster for more spell damage and cast speed, and Arcane Heroism is the main that we want for the increased effect of Arcane Surge. This one is meh, you can get any third notable instead of this. For our medium cluster, we have one with Totems, Sleepless Sentries for Onslaught, and then Ancestral Echo for more cast speed. On this jewel socket here we have Self-Flagellation. This unique jewel allows us to have free damage per curse on us, and also adds one extra curse that can be applied to us. So we have total 8 curses up to 160% free spell damage. On this side we have a projectile damage jewel, not cluster, not jewel, with repeater for cast speed and damage, and striking bolts to taunt the enemy, so we are safe. We can play behind our totems and the totems will taunt and taking aggro. On this jewel socket we have a Clear Mind Cobalt jewel. This grants up to 60% increased spell damage while we have no mana reserve. We have no mana reserve because we are using our auras through Essence Ones. On this jewel socket we have a Rain of Splinters. This will be for totems firing 2 additional projectiles without having no damage. We actually have 32% damage reduction, but this is negated through the extra projectile. This is for mostly map clearing. You can actually skip it, but I prefer that you use it. It's really good for the coverage. On this and this 2 jewel slots we have 2 first snow, one here for Freezing Pulse, firing 2 additional projectiles. So we have 2 here, 2 here and 2 here, total of 6 additional projectiles without using GMP, so without losing any damage. We also have Pain Attunement here. For the low life we get this because of Coward's Legacy, and that will be the build for the Freezing Pulse. Now if we want to swap to Ice Spears, what we do is we take this out, take this jewel socket out, put some life and crit multi jewels instead, and then we swap out Freezing Pulse for Ice Spear, and then we go into bossing. The only time you want to swap to Ice Spear is when you are facing large bosses like Maven, Cyrus, 10 boss fight arenas, and maybe these special invitations as well. Other than that, the Freezing Pulse will work just as fine without anything. And that's about it. That concludes the build. And upgrades, as I said, for the gears you can get a better helmet, even better gloves, and mostly you can get a very powerful scepter on the slot. Tailwind does not do anything, so tailwind boots are not needed. We don't need onslaught because we're getting through clusters. If you want, you can skip some survivability over here and get a second cluster set up. You can anoint Whispers of Doom for another extra curse as well. But I am kinda out of money and I can't really do those things right now. Because there will be a very cool project within the next week as well. So that is it about the build, the conclusion of this, and I wish you all safe exiles.